October 18th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. Who's up for a little star transit? Well, tonight, according to earthsky.org, we can watch that bright star Deneb transit at nightfall. Tonight, the northernmost star of the summer triangle asterism, Deneb, and that's spelled D-E-N-E-B, transits or climbs to its highest point in the sky at or near 7 p.m. in your local time. That's 8 p.m. if you're in daylight saving time. What does this mean for us skywatchers? Well, only that this noteworthy star, this beloved member of the summer triangle, is shifting ever westward in our sky as Earth travels around the sun. Its transit at nightfall might be considered a kind of hallmark of the year, marking a shift toward winter or summer depending on which part of the hemisphere you reside in, northern or southern. When the sun or a star transits, it resides at one of three places: at zenith, straight overhead, north of zenith, or south of zenith. For instance, at 45 degrees north latitude, which would be St. Paul, Minnesota, or Turin, Italy, Deneb shines straight overhead when it transits. At 40 degrees north latitude, and that would be, by example, the latitude of Denver, Colorado, or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Deneb soars to its highest point about 1.5 hours after sunset, or as evening dusk gives way to nightfall. At temperate latitudes in the Southern Hemisphere, you folks have springtime. Deneb transits at or near the same hour by the clock, near 7 p.m., your local time. And yet, the sun sets later by the clock at more southerly latitudes. So, in that southern hemisphere, you folks see Deneb this time of year actually transit at evening dusk instead of nightfall. At more northerly or southerly latitudes, Deneb either transits to the north or the south of that zenith point. Appreciably south of 45 degrees north latitude, for instance, Deneb lies to the north of the zenith point as it transits. Conversely, when Deneb transits at latitudes appreciably north of 45 degrees north latitude, Deneb then is viewed in the southern sky. Yep, it's complicated. Deneb has a bit of an entourage, two brilliant stars, Vega and Altair. They team up with Deneb to complete that humongous summer triangle. The luminous summer triangle asterism, or star formation, not truly a constellation, can often be seen in a twilight sky, even if you're in a light-polluted environment. From mid-northern latitudes, the far northern stars Deneb and Vega are seen at the top of that summer triangle, whereas the southernmost star Altair will be located at the bottom. From the southern hemisphere, it's the other way around, but of course, Altair reigns at the top, Deneb is at the bottom. It's all a matter of perspective. Vega, the summer triangle's westernmost star, is seen on the right side of Deneb from mid-northern latitudes. On the other hand, from the southern hemisphere, Vega lies to the left of Deneb. Around the world, the stars of the summer triangle transit some 4 minutes earlier with each following day, or 2 hours earlier with each following month. So, from northerly latitudes, the summer triangle is destined to shift over into the western sky at nightfall as autumn ebbs toward winter, or, for those in the southern hemisphere, as spring blooms into summer. Oh, such astronomical poetry. Thank you, Bruce McClure. Here's the bottom line. As darkness falls on October 18th, the star Deneb shines at the apex of the sky at mid-northern latitudes. Get out, look up, enjoy. Drones in the news, drones hitting planes, and here's another complication resulting from drones. Headline: drones flying over California wildfires hurt firefighting efforts, say officials. We picked this up from Fox News, but the story runs the same just about everywhere concerning this. Drones attempting to capture footage of the widespread devastation from the California wildfires are impeding efforts to contain the blaze and posing a serious threat to the firefighters attempting to smother the flames, according to officials. The California Highway Patrol in Santa Rosa issued the warning to drone operators on Sunday after several of these devices were seen flying over the burnt land. Quote, "Cal Fire is reporting drones in the Petaluma area." All caps, "Firefighting planes cannot fly if your drone is in the air!" Exclamation mark. "Land them if you want these fires out," it continues. That's what the California Highway Patrol officials wrote in their Santa Rosa Facebook page. A 24-year-old man, in fact, was arrested on Sunday. He was flying his drone over a Petaluma airport. The Mercury News publication reports this. Firefighting helicopters were forced to remain on ground for 10 minutes while his device was flying around. He was cited for impeding emergency personnel. Those wildfires ravaging Northern California's wine country for more than a week have killed at least 40 people, destroyed thousands of homes and businesses. Most of the deaths were reported in Sonoma. Again, gentle listeners, we ask you to join us as we send all of the loving, healing energy we can to the areas around the world afflicted by all of these tragedies. Hang on, we're going to shift now from California to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Headline, "Mysterious flash of fire was actually Russian rocket breaking up." Dubai, United Arab Emirates, in fact Abu Dhabi is the specific location, a discarded Russian cargo spaceship burned across the night sky of the Arabian Peninsula, drawing gasps from Dubai to Riyadh before breaking up in the Earth's atmosphere and scattering over the Indian Ocean. The fiery end Monday night of the unmanned Progress MS-07 came as planned after it delivered 2.75 tons of water, food, and scientific equipment to the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. But its 80-second appearance in the skies of the United Emirates stunned onlookers in a region where Iran regularly test-fires ballistic missiles, and Shiite rebels in Yemen are threatening to use them against Abu Dhabi. Even a day after this incident, government officials still hadn't corrected their earlier statements which identified this object as a meteor. The disposable aircraft blasted off Saturday from the Russian-leased Baikonur launch complex in Kazakhstan. Its rockets and stages earlier fell harmlessly and largely unnoticed into the atmosphere, said Hassan Ahmed Al-Hariri. He's the CEO of the Dubai Astronomy Group. After unloading it at the space station, astronauts sent the spaceship to its death as planned. Its path down was timed perfectly for it to be seen beginning from 7:35 p.m. Monday, said Al-Hariri. It streaked across the Dubai skyline beyond the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, drawing both stunned and anxious reaction from those watching. Quote, "It was quite visible for the public," end quotes, Al-Hariri told the Associated Press. Quote, "It's not something you see every day. It was beautiful to see that thing up in the sky disintegrating into pieces," end quotes. Soon, he said, quote, "People were banging me with calls," end quotes. The government Dubai media office, citing the Sheikdom's Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, quickly described the aerial display as a, quote, "meteorite." The United Arab Emirates General Civil Aviation Authority said in a statement, quote, "The meteor was a natural and regular phenomena at this time of the year," end quotes. But it wasn't a meteor. Instead, it was the 21.3-foot-long spaceship breaking up some 87 miles in the sky. The Space Center, which hopes to launch a probe to Mars in 2020, did not respond to a request for comment on Tuesday. The United Arab Emirate announced in February that it wants to build the first city on Mars by 2117. For Al-Hariri, whose semi-governmental organization hopes to soon open its Al-Turaya Astronomy Center along the flight path of the Dubai International Airport, the incident on Monday night shows the importance of educating the public about the wonders of space. He noted that despite the UAE's rapid development, its empty deserts offer beautiful viewing of the stars at night, including glimpses of the Milky Way. Here's a final quote from Hassan Ahmed Al-Hariri, Quote, "It was something that was really worth looking at. It was beautiful to see," end quotes. And you can see it. We'll put up a link at ufoheadlinenews.com later. It is astonishing footage. Hard to believe it's space junk. Here's a headline that really tugged at our imagination. Aliens are actually immortal robots, and they're billions of years old, researcher claims. Rob Waugh writes this for Yahoo News, United Kingdom. Will aliens be delicate, hairless creatures with big almond eyes, as some UFO believers think, or big, slimy green blobs with eyes on stalks? Probably neither, scientists say. The first aliens we encounter are likely to be machines, and they'll be almost unimaginably old. Susan Schneider of the University of Connecticut and the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton says that alien AI may already be out there, and it could be billions of years old. Susan Schneider says, quote, "I do not believe that most advanced alien civilizations will be biological. The most sophisticated civilizations will be post-biological, forms of artificial intelligence or alien superintelligence," end quotes. Schneider said in a daily Galaxy report, quote, "All lines of evidence converge on the conclusion that the maximum age of extraterrestrial intelligence would be billions of years. Specifically, the ranges from 1.7 billion to 8 billion years," end quotes. Many researchers believe that the first aliens we encounter will be robots. The reason? It's all about the probability and how long it takes alien civilizations to evolve from developing radio communications to becoming immortal cyborgs. Many scientists believe that the period from the discovery of radio waves to organisms turning themselves into immortal robots will be relatively brief. Google's Ray Kurzweil, in fact, has predicted that man will merge with machine here on Earth in the year 2050. The upshot of this is that it's far, far more likely that we'll meet aliens after they've turned into machines, according to some experts. Seth Shostak of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence says, quote, "Consider the fact that any signal we pick up has to come from a civilization at least as advanced as we are. Now, let's say conservatively, the average civilization will use radio for 10,000 years. So, from a purely probabilistic point of view, the chance of encountering a society far older than ourselves is quite high," end quotes. Alrighty then, it's Wayback Wednesday. We're going to recap the Manhattan Transfer Abduction, as it's called, the story of Linda Cortile, and then we'll move forward with this incredible tale. This is written by Les Hewitt for Paranormal Phenomena, and he writes, "Bordering on paranormal, the phenomenon of alien abduction has polarized the world in opinions and conclusions. The truth of whether or not extraterrestrials are somehow finding their way to our planet to perform strange experiments on hapless victims is possibly secondary to the mystery of the widespread accounts of such visitations. How can so many people have had encounters, and yet there's so little concrete evidence? So let's talk about Linda Cortile. She claimed gray aliens abducted her from her apartment in Manhattan. And as is the case with all abduction stories, skeptics were quick to cry hoax. She originally called herself Linda Cortile, but she later changed her name to Linda Napolitano. Around 3 a.m., November 30th, 1989, Linda supposedly had an experience with several gray aliens. At the time, she could only recall fragments, but she remembered enough to claim that she floated out of her closed bedroom window on her 12th floor apartment and into a hovering UFO. Once on board, the beings escorted her to a room that was likely a medical bay. There she underwent some examination. With selected parts of the event not immediately available to her, she sought out the help of Bud Hopkins, who ultimately decided to try hypnotic regression. These sessions took place over the course of much of the following year. Along with her original memories, these sessions filled in many blanks of a standard abduction experience. What makes this Manhattan transfer abduction experience stand out from almost every other one was what happened just over a year after her abduction. The late Bud Hopkins, artist, UFO researcher, and author, and hypnotist.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and/or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Received apparent confirmation from 2 additional witnesses. A letter arrived in the post from 2 men who called themselves Richard and Dan. Even though the letter corroborated the reports Linda had made, Bud Hopkins did have some doubts over this pair. Wanting to learn more about them, Bud Hopkins conducted background checks on them, and it turned out both men had the same career: close quarters bodyguards. Here's the interesting element. Additionally, on the 30th of November, the evening of this incident, this abduction, both of these men were guarding the same man. Some people believe that man was the United Nations Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar. All 3 of these men were in a limousine. They were crossing the Brooklyn Bridge when they saw something that shocked them. Both bodyguards insisted that they saw a woman floating way above the ground and towards a massive craft. Ultimately, Hopkins was to receive another letter in the mail, a letter from a woman known as Janet Trimble. She revealed that she, too, was driving across the Brooklyn Bridge at the time of the original abduction. She was a retired telephone operator. She assumed the event she was seeing was nothing more than a scene, some sort of film shoot for an upcoming science fiction film. With the addition of a 4th witness, Bud Hopkins made the decision to go public and revealed some of the details of this entire event. If indeed that 3rd man in the limo was that then-current United Nations Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar, you can imagine, gentle listeners, the ramifications of that. If Cuellar had come forward publicly, he could have propelled the quartile abduction into the stratosphere of UFO cases with credible documentation. Bud Hopkins and Cuellar corresponded on a regular basis, and while he did confirm details, ultimately Cuellar refused to go public. He was, however, willing to meet with Bud Hopkins behind closed doors on the condition that Hopkins never disclose his name to the public domain. We're going to be jumping back and forth in time. Let's go slightly forward to 2003. Linda Cortile agreed to a sit-down interview with French magazine La Gazette Photienne. During this interview, she added several new facts to her account. The main addition to the original report was information of an undisclosed witness to that abduction. All that Cortile revealed was that a witness, a truck driver for the New York Post, was there, saw it, had an ideal vantage point from said Brooklyn Bridge. Now let's jump to content provided by Philip Coppens. He spells that Coppens. He says, the case dramatically changed scope once Bud Hopkins received that letter from the 2 policemen. They sent him a letter, very long and involved. It's an account of that evening, an account of what they saw. In February of 1991, 15 months after the abduction, Hopkins realized their account matched the place and time of Linda Napolitano's experience. Further investigation convinced him that this was the first independent corroboration of an abduction. Furthermore, the witnesses seemed to have impeccable credentials, policemen rather than normal members of the public. However, as soon as the experiences were built, they began to crumble. Bud Hopkins soon discovered that the 2 policemen were, in fact, members of the CIA. These policemen had claimed they contacted Hopkins as ever since they'd witnessed the abduction, they simply could not get that image out of their heads. As to the reasons why they stayed out of reach, Hopkins learned that they were acting as security guards for a famous political figure. The 2 men, along with the then anonymous political figure, were heading towards the New York heliport when the car had stopped mysteriously on its own. The two bodyguards and the politician then witnessed that abduction. It almost seemed as if the abduction had been staged so that one of the most influential men in the world, the then Secretary General of the United Nations, Javier Pérez de Cuellar, would see the alien reality for himself. Here's more about the other witness, the woman nicknamed Janet Trimble. She was saying that while she was passing over the Brooklyn Bridge at 3 a.m., November 30th, 1989, somehow all of the car's lights and engines, everybody on the bridge, everything failed, including the street lights on the bridge. She therefore got out of her car to see what had happened and saw, with other drivers, a woman floating 12 stories high into a hovering UFO above her apartment building. Now, at this point, Bud Hopkins must have felt this case was becoming too good to be true. During a routine examination, a metallic object was discovered inside Linda's nasal cavity, which suggested that it might have been an alien implant. 2 weeks after the X-ray, she suffered a serious nosebleed during the night. In the morning, she found extensive bloodstains on her face and pillow. Later X-ray revealed that this metallic object was no longer present in her nostril, though a conspicuous ridge of built-up cartilage showed there had once been something there. The suspicion was that the aliens had implanted her, but after the implant having been discovered, it was removed, so that this, quote, alien technology, end quotes, would not fall into human hands. Still, it meant that the case remained just like all the others, a case of reports, but without any hard evidence. Although the case remained much better than all the others, much more substance. By 1993, the Linda Napolitano-Linda Cortile case had generated enormous interest and international attention, being discussed in the Wall Street Journal, by Omni, Paris Match, and the New York Times. Hopkins and Napolitano had appeared on television shows such as Inside Edition. But Hopkins also realized that if he could convince de Cuellar to publicly corroborate the story, then it would be sensational. Something else was sensational. That was the reaction, the subsequent behavior of these two individuals, Richard and Dan. They became so transfixed, so obsessed with Linda. Was she all right? Did she in fact possess supernatural powers, alien powers perhaps? And in the months and years that followed, Linda Cortile, Linda Napolitano, was to be abducted again in broad daylight with no witnesses, and the abduction this time by Richard and Dan. It's very complex, very convoluted. There is something here we just can't look away from. We'll get into the rest of it, and there is a lot, next week on Way Back Wednesday. Meanwhile, if you just can't wait, we're sure you can find a plethora of info on ye old internet concerning this case. Again, we toss a tip of the hat to our man in the high castle in his secure and undisclosed location. Oh, it seems we're about to be abducted by that old thing called time. We've got to fly out of here because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at UFO Headline News or iHeartRadio. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15%.